In August 2024, Ismael Mayo Zambada, the co-founder and operational brain of the Sinaloa Cartel, a man who had evaded law enforcement for 40 years, was arrested on American soil. He had been lured onto a plane by a Mexican politician who delivered him to US authorities. The arrest generated global headlines. What the headlines did not explain was the financial scale of what Zambada had built. Sinaloa Cartel generates an estimated $3 billion in annual profit after expenses. Its rival, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG, generates an estimated $2 billion. Together, two criminal organizations headquartered in Mexico earn more combined profit than many publicly traded corporations that employ hundreds of thousands of people and appear on stock exchanges around the world. The United States has spent over $1 trillion fighting the war on drugs since Richard Nixon declared it in 1971. Drug overdose deaths in America reached 107,000 in 2023, the highest number ever recorded. The street price of cocaine has fallen 80% since the 1980s, meaning supply has massively increased despite 5 decades of enforcement. This is not a law enforcement failure, it is an economic story, and the economics have never been explained in full. The reason cartels cannot be arrested into submission is not organizational resilience, it is mathematics. A kilogram of cocaine purchased from a Colombian producer costs approximately $1,500. That same kilogram, transported to the United States and sold at wholesale, is worth approximately $27,000. Sold at retail, broken into grams on American streets, the same kilogram generates approximately $100,000 in revenue. A 6,600% markup. No legal business on earth operates at those margins. No technology company, no pharmaceutical firm, no financial institution generates that kind of return on input cost. The margin is the product of prohibition. The higher the legal risk, the higher the price, the higher the profit for anyone willing to absorb the risk. Fentanyl has made the mathematics even more extreme. A kilogram of fentanyl costs approximately $800 to manufacture from Chinese chemical precursors. At retail in the United States, that same kilogram is worth $80,000, a 100 times return on the cost of production. Fentanyl is also 50 times more potent than heroin by weight, meaning it requires far less physical volume to achieve the same effect, making it dramatically easier to conceal and transport. The cartel pivot from heroin to fentanyl was not a drug policy decision. It was a business decision, driven entirely by margin analysis, higher profit per kilogram, lower weight per dose, harder to detect. The fact that fentanyl kills at doses measured in micrograms, making accidental overdose far more likely, was an externality the business model did not need to account for. The cartels long ago stopped being purely drug trafficking organizations. They are diversified conglomerates, and the legitimate businesses are not just cover, they are genuine revenue streams. In the state of Michoacán in western Mexico, the avocado industry generates approximately $3 billion per year in exports. Michoacán produces nearly half of the world's avocados. It is also the primary territory of the CJNG and its rivals. Every avocado farmer in Michoacán pays a cartel tax, a percentage of revenue for the right to operate. Every transport truck pays a checkpoint fee. Every packing house, every export broker, every cold storage facility operates within a cartel-defined commercial framework. When you purchase Mexican avocados at a grocery store in the United States, a portion of the retail price has passed through cartel-controlled supply chains. The same is true for limes, mangoes, strawberries, and increasingly iron ore. In the early 2010s, cartels in Michoacán seized control of iron ore mining operations and began exporting directly to Chinese steel mills, cutting out the legitimate mining companies and using the legitimate export channels to move cartel money through traceable international transactions. Mexican authorities seized dozens of iron ore shipments. The operations continued. Then there is fuel theft. Cartels tap Pemex pipelines, Mexico's state oil company, through illegal pipeline perforations. In peak years, the fuel theft operation generated an estimated $3 billion annually. Pemex acknowledged losing approximately 100,000 barrels per day to illegal tapping. The stolen fuel is sold at below market prices through cartel-controlled gas stations, creating a secondary retail network. Real estate is the final layer. Cartel profits flow into construction companies, hotels, restaurants, car dealerships, and agricultural land. purchased through nominees and shell companies that survive even when their beneficial owners are arrested. The cartel economy would not function at its current scale without the participation, willing or negligent, of the formal banking system. In December 2012, HSBC, one of the world's largest banks, paid $1.9 billion in fines to U.S. authorities. The settlement was for laundering hundreds of millions of dollars for the Sinaloa Cartel and other Mexican drug trafficking organizations through its Mexican subsidiary. The details of the HSBC case were extraordinary. The bank's Mexico operations had removed anti-money laundering compliance officers to cut costs. Cartel members walked into HSBC branches in Mexico with boxes of cash and deposited them through teller windows. The boxes were later found to have been specifically sized to fit HSBC Mexico teller windows, suggesting the operational relationship was systematic enough to have informed the cartel's cash logistics. No HSBC executive was prosecuted. No individual went to prison. The bank paid the fine, roughly 5 weeks of revenue at the time, and continued operating. The HSBC case was not unique. Wachovia Bank, now part of Wells Fargo, was found to have laundered $378 billion for Mexican drug cartels between 2004 and 2007. $378 billion. The bank paid $160 million in fines. No criminal charges were filed. The settlement was processed as a civil agreement. The message sent to the global banking industry by these outcomes was clear. Laundering cartel money carries financial risk, specifically a fine representing a small fraction of the revenue generated, but no criminal risk for the individuals who approved, managed, or ignored the compliance failures. The traditional cartel money laundering model has been supplemented by a more modern architecture that exploits the gaps in cryptocurrency regulation. The mechanism works in layers. Drug sales in the United States generate cash. That cash is exchanged for cryptocurrency, typically USDT, the dollar-pegged stablecoin, through unlicensed money brokers operating in major US cities. The cryptocurrency is moved through a series of wallets and mixing services to obscure the chain of transactions. It is then sold for pesos or dollars through brokers in Mexico City, Guadalajara, or Culiacan, ending up in cartel-controlled accounts as clean funds with no traceable link to the original drug transaction. The U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network estimates that cartel-linked cryptocurrency transactions exceed $2.5 billion annually, and that figure represents only what has been traced. The actual volume is believed to be significantly higher. Chinese money brokers have become a critical node in this system. Chinese nationals operating in Mexico City act as financial intermediaries between Mexican cartels and Chinese businesses that want to move money out of China without triggering capital controls. The cartel delivers cash dollars. The Chinese broker pays the cartel in pesos from Chinese business accounts already in Mexico. The Chinese business then has dollars in the United States bypassing Chinese capital controls. The cartel has clean pesos with a legitimate appearing source. Both parties benefit. Law enforcement calls this the black market peso exchange, operating at a scale that dwarfs all previous versions of the scheme. The most consequential fact about the cartel economy is not the revenue, it is the governance. Cartels do not simply bribe Mexican officials. In significant portions of Mexico, cartels are the governing authority, collecting taxes, resolving disputes, providing security, and setting commercial rules for the local economy. The relationship with the formal state is not corruption at the margins, it is structural. General Garcia Luna served as Mexico's Secretary of Public Security from 2006 to 2012, the nation's top law enforcement official during the most violent period of the drug war. In February 2023, a jury in New York convicted Garcia Luna of taking millions of dollars in bribes from the Sinaloa Cartel in exchange for providing intelligence on rival cartels, protecting Sinaloa drug shipments, and obstructing investigations into the organization's leadership. The head of Mexican federal law enforcement was on the cartel payroll. General Salvador Cienfuegos, Mexico's Secretary of National Defense, the commander of the Mexican military, was arrested in Los Angeles in 2020 on cartel-related charges. The Mexican government immediately demanded his return. Under diplomatic pressure, the U.S. Department of Justice dropped the charges and returned him to Mexico, where Mexican prosecutors ultimately cleared him. The plaza system explains the mechanics. Each cartel territory is divided into plazas, geographic operational zones. The plaza boss pays a monthly fee to local police commanders, municipal officials, and state-level political contacts. In exchange, the cartel receives advance warning of raids, protection from rival organizations, and freedom to operate. The payment is not a bribe in the transactional sense. It is a tax, a regular budgeted line item in the cartel's financial model. Here is what the cartel economy actually demonstrates. The cartels are not a law enforcement problem that has resisted solution. They are an economic system responding to one of the most durable forms of consumer demand in human history, and operating with profit margins that make their elimination mathematically impossible through enforcement alone. The United States has spent $1 trillion and 50 years attempting to reduce the supply of drugs crossing its southern border. The street price of cocaine is 80% lower than it was in 1980. Supply has increased every decade. 107,000 Americans died of drug overdoses in 2023, more than the number of Americans killed in the Vietnam and Korean Wars combined. The cartel organizations that produce those deaths are more financially sophisticated, more geographically diversified, and more deeply embedded in legitimate commerce than at any point in their history. They own agriculture, they own real estate, they own politicians, they own generals. And they operate within a global financial system that has repeatedly demonstrated it will absorb their money with a fine rather than a prosecution. The 50-year war on drugs has not reduced the cartel economy, it has industrialized it. What began as regional smuggling networks has become a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with diversified revenue streams, captured state institutions, and a money laundering infrastructure that spans legitimate banks on 4 continents. The economics were never going to lose to enforcement. Because the margin has always been too large, the demand has always been too durable, and the money has always found a bank willing to take it.